Okay, Letty, thank you. All right, Jesus, we're recording. I'll get started.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm getting the YouTube stream going.
Okay, let me know.
All right, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, everybody. Welcome to the April 6th meeting of the CB6 Strategic Community Planning Committee meeting. My name is Kavitha Matthew, and I'm chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 7:03 p.m. And tonight we're joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have in a feature of Zoom. I think somebody needs to be muted. Okay, because I can hear an echo. Okay, if there's time following the committee's discussion, we'll field questions from the public. And we do not have, we need a volunteer to take minutes for tonight's meeting. If you can volunteer to take minutes tonight, please raise your hand through Zoom. I know we had somebody planned, but then when we moved the meeting, unfortunately, that person couldn't attend. Rich, you're going to take minutes, looks like. Thank you. Okay, yes. So for the record, Rich Mintz will be taking our minutes for tonight's meeting. And let's see. You should have, just to continue with the minutes, you should all have received several emails from the board office with a link to a doodle sign-up sheet for minutes takers at your committee meetings in 2021. For your convenience, the link to this committee, to this doodle poll is also being posted in the chat right now. So Jesus will post that. And at the discretion of the board chair, each committee meeting must have a designated minutes taker and a designated backup just in case. To eliminate the guesswork, make sure that you volunteer for as many slots on the doodle poll sign up as you can. If more than 2 people sign up for a particular month, the office will make sure to distribute the duties equitably and will let you know in advance which months you're due to take minutes. So if you've not already filled out the doodle, please do so right away. Now we'll take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call.
Good evening, everyone. When I call your name, you will unmute yourselves and then you will announce present. Asia Badi.
Present.
Thank you. Jim Collins. Jim Collins. Kavitha Matthew.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra McKee.
Present.
Thank you. Wells Magali. Wells Magali. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Thank you. Lou Sapersky.
Yo.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod. Sandro Sherrod. All right. Letty Simon.
Present.
Thank you. Corinne Vanderdonk. Corinne Vanderdonk. Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Thank you. And we do have quorum.
All right. Thanks so much, Jesus. And now the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we'll adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Rich, your hand's still raised, but I think that was for minutes, right? Okay. Okay, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the March 4th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we'll adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the March 4th meeting are adopted. They soon will be available on the CB6 website. I'm just going to go through the ground rules quickly. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. And when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So we can move into tonight's agenda, and it's a pretty short agenda. So to start out, our first item is to review next steps and timing for outreach to develop a community plan for the Mount Sinai Beth Israel site. And I know we have members of the public here, and some of them may have joined for this topic. So what I wanted to do tonight and hope probably in the future is just give a little background. And I'm going to just take this basically from our website that we set up, perlmanplace.org, to give a little background on the Msbi site and what's going on there. So for 130 years, Mount Sinai Beth Israel has been a leader in medical research, providing our community with a full range of healthcare services. Until recently, Msbi owned 14 lots between 15th and 18th Streets, between 1st and 2nd Avenues. 6 lots were sold to the Sim Group, an owner, operator, lender, and developer of real assets, and 7 remain under Msbi's ownership. In 2023, Mount Sinai Beth Israel intends to sell 2 of its properties, 1 and 10 Nathan Perlman Place, as part of the hospital system's downtown transformation efforts to right-size its medical services and support for New York City residents. Faced with roughly $350 million operating shortfall over the last 4 years, Msbi expressed a need to downsize its overall operations by reducing the number of empty inpatient beds and increasing specialization across facilities. However, at this time, considering both the pandemic and the effects this is having on the city, Msbi is reviewing plans to shift services and sell the properties. We'll provide updates as they become available. So some of the services that we expect to be removed from our community by 2023 or whatever date is, the new expected date include treatment for heart disease, cancer, neurology, orthopedics, GI disease, chemical dependency, psychiatric disorders, pain management, and palliative care, and HIV/AIDS. Plus psychiatric and substance abuse services at 1 Nathan Perlman Place. Behavioral health and emergency services will be relocated outside of CD6 to 45 Rivington Street and 380 2nd Avenue. Maternity services will also be relocated. So that's a little background on what's going on with that. We've been trying to stay engaged with Msbi and provide updates. I know that things are pretty much on hold given their focus on the pandemic and COVID-related issues, but we check in fairly regularly and expect to hear from them if there's any updates. And in the meantime, our committee spearheaded creating some community engagement efforts and put together a website. Maybe, Jesus, if it's not already in the chat. Oh, it's in the chat. Thank you. So that's perlmanplace.org. You can find more information there, as well as a survey you can fill out. Members of the public can fill out to tell us what kinds of things you want to see in our neighborhood, because we do feel that there's opportunity for backfill as those services leave and that very large space is sold to whichever developers end up taking it. And with that, I have connected over the past couple of weeks with Jason Money, who is a community outreach person with SPNA, the Stuyvesant Park Neighborhood Association. And he's agreed to let us kind of piggyback onto events they're planning for the spring and summer in the park, tabling events that we could set up, have a person there, hand out our survey, get some feedback from the community. So with that, that's really the main update I have. Jim, I see your hand up. Did you have a question? I think you're on mute.
You mentioned 382nd Avenue. Is that the correct address? That's opposite Epiphany Church, and I thought we had talked about that. I thought the actual address was right there at the corner of 14th Street and 2nd Avenue. The old New York, I think it's
Ioneer or something.
Ioneer
I think you're
House.
right. I think you're right. And I'll double check that. I know we had corrected it in one place, but maybe it was a leftover in another, because I don't think it's.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Thank you
an
for that.
apartment building, as I recollect.
Okay, we'll double check.
There's
later.
some kind of clinic there too, but I don't think it's associated with Mount Sinai.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll make sure that gets updated if it's incorrect.
All right.
So one thing that I did want to see if we could get any volunteers from the committee to take on is looking at the survey we had put together. We don't have a lot of responses. We really do think that could be reworked in a better way to get more community feedback. I spoke with the office about some other ideas about like maybe making like even a little mini video or some kind of intro to let people know exactly what's going on. I know the information's on the website, but open to any ideas about that. So if anyone wants to volunteer here at the meeting or let me know afterwards, I think that would be very helpful. I know some of you have expressed opinions about the survey as it is now.
You might want to look at Facebook ads or targeted Facebook ads and or Twitter ads.
To get the survey out. I think there's something, and Sandy, I see your hands up, so I'll let you chime in.
Can that hold for just a minute? I'll be right back. I'm sorry, there's someone at the door.
Okay. I'll keep going. Go ahead. Yeah, I understand, Jim. I think part of it is definitely the getting the survey out there, but the other part is like encouraging people to want to fill it out and have the information that feels like, is going to be useful for folks, that they know that they're giving some valuable input. All right, so Sandy's back.
Sorry. I was wondering if we could change the format so that the information that you input could be anonymous. I know right now we're trying to interest people in signing up for the newsletter, but it's also, yes, most surveys you don't have to, you're only contacted if you want to be contacted. So if
I will work on redrafting something, a more detailed survey, and I agree with what Sandy is saying.
Yeah, and definitely some places for people to put in opinions. What does our community need is a great question.
We do have that, but we have like a list of choices and then we have an open item, but we could make it more open-ended question. And I think that would work better. And Letty, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Letty.
And I think, Jesus, we talked in the office a little bit about it too, I don't know if it's really that you put in, I think we need to make it clear that it's not being used for anything else, like the anonymous nature of the survey. And I don't know how to make sure that's stated properly or how to use, it's in an Airtable now, and maybe there's a different way we can do it. Not to just, Cody or anything, I'm not sure.
No, we can look at that, ways to make it so that people can respond anonymously, as well as greater flexibility with some of the responses. I'll put the link to the survey as it currently is constituted right now in the chat for all panelists and those watching at home, or rather those who are signed in as attendees.
Okay, great, thank you. And I don't have any other real updates on MSBI for now. I'm going to keep checking in and see if there's anything we can provide, or ask if Brad Corn could attend one of our upcoming meetings if anything's going on. I know there haven't been any meetings with the Borough President's Task Force either on this recently, at least not that I've heard of or been to. So we will keep a close eye on that and continue. Any questions on MSBI or that topic before we move on to our next agenda item? Okay. So I think the main thing we want to get into tonight, we actually, Jim worked on preparing the initial draft of a resolution to respond to the legislative proposal from City Council Speaker Corey Johnson regarding the creation of a 10-year comprehensive planning framework known as Intro 2186 of 2020. And the draft was prepared, and Ann Seligman, who thank you, Ann, for attending, and Adam Hartke have also been involved. And we actually put together kind of the rough resolution and got it in front of George Janes. Unfortunately, we didn't have much time. He only saw it yesterday and had quite a lot of comments. So I actually don't think we're not nearly ready to vote on anything tonight, but I did want to discuss what's in there with you guys and actually give a little background for anyone who's not familiar with the bill and the legislation that's being introduced. So backing up a little bit, this intro was created as a proposal to have a comprehensive planning, long-term planning process for New York City, which, believe it or not, there is none right now. And a lot of the things that happen in the city are done by multiple agencies in a very somewhat ad hoc manner. A lot of other cities around the world have adopted something like this, which is comprehensive planning, meaning tying in a lot of different issues, not just land use, but land use with the budget, the timing with the different agencies, community engagement efforts throughout. And this particular legislation was created with the intent, or at least the stated intent, of increasing equity in terms of giving opportunities for communities that have been underserved in the past to have more of a stake, more of a say, and more attention, essentially. So the thing is, we've kind of gone back through there was a huge document that was created for this, which was called Planning Together. It's like a booklet that described the history of planning in the city. And then also, and I know a lot of you heard of this last time or at land use if you were there, but Planning Together kind of lays out the reasoning behind it, and then goes on to lay out the process, the proposed process of how they wanted to change things up. And it involved essentially the Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability kind of taking on the main role in putting together plans, citywide plans based on input from each of the agencies about density and opportunities and all sorts of other factors are put into it, but it's basically a 10-year cycle that this planning effort would take, which was one thing that became kind of an issue that we've discussed a little bit. And I'll let others jump in on this as we go, but it's a 10-year effort. It's also has, in addition to the Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, or it's hard to say the OTPLS, whatever it is. There are also steering committees. There's a citywide steering committee, which is supposed to be comprised of 13 people, 4 of them appointed by the mayor, 4 of them by the city council speaker, and 5 of them each by one of the borough presidents. And those folks would actually have a lot of input as to helping to create 3 potential plans for each district. And from those, there would be at least 1 per year, a public hearing for the community to hear about plans, 3 potential plans for I guess, for city council, for community boards and everybody to weigh in on and select one of to move forward with. If you don't select one, basically the director of the Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability picks one for you and proceeds with that. So given all of that, we felt like there was, while most of us agreed that comprehensive planning is a positive thing, there was a lot of pushback on the actual legislation and how it's laid out and some of its top-down nature. So I don't know, Jim or Ann or Adam, if you, or Sandy, anyone who has kind of been involved closely with it, if you want to jump in with anything. But given the draft we sent over to George, he had a lot of edits, which I think were good. And main point was that he wanted us to be, and we'll show this in a moment, Jesus can share this with you, but that he wanted us to be more direct and clear about our resolution, because essentially we ended up saying that we support, how did we word it? Do we support it but strongly object to certain aspects of it? I don't have to have it in front of me, so we'll, yeah, here we go. So is this the one that's been updated?
This is the cleaned up version.
Sorry?
This is the cleaned up version.
This is the version that actually adopts all of George James's edits. I don't think any of them were really, I mean, some of them did pick apart some of the content, but I do think he, in the end, made it clear. He's offered, he couldn't be here tonight, but offered to work with us in the coming weeks to develop this further. And what I thought is we can, between our committee and land use, come up with a more final version of this draft to vote on at a later date. So I don't think we are ready at this point to vote on anything, but I can run through kind of, or Jim, you want to, I don't know if you want to take us through some of the aspects of how you started laying out the resolution.
Well, I did it thinking that it was due much earlier than it was.
Yeah.
So I kind of did the whole thing from a perspective of about 30,000 feet. I have no issues really with George's edits, save for his capitalization rules, which are counter to what everything I ever learned was. You know, capitalizing mayor and those kind of things. But beyond that, I have no issues with it. I don't know how this version handles it, but
Well, I see that Lou has a question or something you want to say, Lou.
Could we circulate a copy of this in writing to the members of the committee so that they can work on it individually and then bring it back collectively? Because working on a draft on the computer is a little hard. Maybe
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe email it to the committee.
Right. I mean, my intent was that hopefully we would have been a little further along or, felt comfortable with it before tonight's meeting. And in that case, I would have sent it all to you guys ahead of time. But yes, certainly if you're interested in making some input to this, I'm also open to, if it's still like a smaller group that wants to continue to work on it, we can decide which way we want to move forward.
I do feel comfortable with it. I mean, including most of George Jane's additions. So one vote for the draft as is.
Well, I think even before I call on you, Claude, even before I get into that, George's comments and his emails, and I'm happy to forward that to you, was that he thought we still needed to work further, especially on the resolved section, to have a stronger argument, to be clear about what we're saying. And we can kind of, I kind of put things into a few different buckets that we can discuss an overview of tonight. But I'm gonna take Claude's question first and then go into that.
I don't have a question. I'm agreeing with Lou. I just think that you should circulate it to the committee so that we can understand what it is you're proposing.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. And if people want to weigh in on it before our next, we're going to set up a meeting with George before the next committee meeting. We can definitely do that. I'm sorry that it wasn't ready ahead of time to send it to you guys. And
We're not looking at anything until June, right?
okay, let me just,
A hard
yeah, let
deadline.
me jump in on that too. The timing, one of the reasons that we kind of jumped in and we're trying to do this was that we weren't sure if this legislation was going to be voted on or passed or whatever at this point, given that Corey Johnson's, got his sights on comptroller, and I didn't know what was going on. There's only one public hearing on this, and there were a lot of opinions expressed. So we weren't sure, it got laid over in committee. But what we've heard from George, who heard from Annie Levers, the one who's been giving this presentation to all the community boards, is that she said that they want to get any comments or resolutions from community boards by sometime in June. They haven't said what date. Given that, I'd like to get this kind of wrapped up and finalized by May. So we were thinking, working backwards, that we could look at it quickly. I could go over the major buckets today of things that I think people should focus on and really, look at the legislation wording and everything and the resolution, give us your comments back, meet with George a couple of times. And then between Adam and I, we can figure out when we have the next available time to review this and get it ahead of a committee for a vote and then to full board, hopefully by May. Anne, go ahead.
Hi, so thanks for popping me to panelist on this, since I don't actually sit on this committee, and I'm actually more than happy to cede my time to Adam if he'd like to go first. But before I do that, if he wants to go ahead, I'd just like to say, like,
please go ahead.
our land use meeting is just in a couple of weeks, and I see the agenda's not posted yet, but I do assume that this is going to be on it, right? Am I assuming that correctly?
So actually, no. The bad news is that the land use agenda is going to be very packed. Unless Jesus says otherwise, we have the New Providence ULURP. So the public hearing is going to happen on the 26th. So that's going to be a joint meeting with housing. And also there's a chance that DCP will present with the new text amendment for the transit bonus.
Yeah, that's a much bigger one, because we can take
Right.
it offline, but I thought the New Providence was pretty pro forma.
It is pro forma, at least from what we have to do technically as a committee and as a board. But however, though, if we're to sort of use the last year in terms of the supportive services issues, there is a chance that, because it is a public hearing, I mean, there's a chance that
There could be a lot of turnout. Yeah.
Right. So basically we are budgeting or slack there, because I mean, those are two sort of weighty issues for, different reasons.
So on this issue, then, here and now, do you want to go first, or should I go for it?
Are you asking Adam?
I am.
Adam, did you have any other?
Oh, no. That was basically going to be my comment. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
That's okay.
But
Yes,
the good news is, my pleasure to know you guys put it all together. I'm just here. So, but I mean, the good news is that there's the June, there is a slack for the June, and it looks like you guys can sort of finalize this within your May committee meeting, which would allow for, additional editing amongst the group.
Adam, I am actually still going back and forth with DCP on this, but
Okay.
there may be an opportunity to perhaps hear the text amendment for the transit accessibility text amendment in May, and not necessarily having to have that at April's meeting. But I'll confirm with you in the next couple of days.
Great. Thank you.
So it sounds
Right.
like, and before you jump in, it sounds like between us, we'll work it out in terms of when this will get finalized, but I think we should focus on trying to get it to the full committee as it is right now, get any comments back, get with George Janes separately outside of the meeting to have, a Zoom or something to kind of go over anything that needs buttoning up, and then work on getting this ready at least for our next meeting in May, which we can, we can definitely add it to the agenda for May, Adam, if it's not going to be on land use. Okay.
Sounds
So,
great. We'll be in touch.
Okay. You were still going, Ann, right? Before I call
Okay,
someone?
yep, I'm happy to. And I have gone down so many different rabbit holes on this amendment and or on this proposal. And if you guys have not, you probably should, because this is something that is likely to influence the shape of the city for the next 50 years. It's really significant. It really is kind of the East Midtown rezoning for the whole city. So the more I learn about it, the more I am conflicted, because I am very supportive of the concept of a comprehensive city plan. I think we, obviously, as a city, that would be very helpful. And it's like apple pie. Who can be really opposed to that? However, when you read this legislation and when you read the testimony, the legislation does not, as written, does not include the mechanisms to achieve the stated aims, particularly the aims of kind of giving local communities more say over what they want for their neighborhoods. Um, and the other stated aim that is not met is that there would be less bureaucracy. It seems to me like it actually is kind of adding another layer of bureaucracy, and I think that's problematic. The three particular areas that I think are problematic are that ULURP is deemed unnecessary for projects that are considered consistent with this long-term plan. And I think that I think that changes, that makes the less ULURP happen. ULURP is a pain in the butt. Everybody knows that. But it is where communities and community boards typically have the most opportunity to speak up. The second item is that budget priorities would be submitted only every 2 years. I don't know how much attention really gets paid to them now by either community members or the powers that be, but I just don't think we want to give that up. And the third thing is that the time horizon for the comprehensive planning framework is 10 years. DCP's testimony was very strongly opposed to this plan, both because of the increased amount of work it would put on them and for the cost. And one of the things that they highlighted is the 10-year, sort of the 10-year timeline, that it reduces flexibility to deal with items like COVID, or Sandy, or 9/11. And so, obviously all of those are things that you need more flexibility for. The One of the things I've kind of really been struggling with is that I do think in a general way it's a great idea to have more comprehensive planning. And so, until maybe 20 minutes ago, I was like, I cannot vote for any resolution that has a resolve saying we support this plan, even though we object to these provisions. Because I just really feel like if that becomes bottom line, CB6 voted in support of this. Period. That's a box that gets ticked. And so, but just in listening to the conversation so far, I'm wondering if we can't have a resolved CB6 is in favor of a comprehensive planning framework, and, therefore be it further resolved, we don't think this does it. So like, that's just kind of a way of splitting the baby. And I don't know if that works, but it's just an idea I just had and I'm throwing out there. And I just want to, one of the final thing I'll say, and then I promise I'll shut up, is the Municipal Art Society, which I have a lot of respect for as urban planners, had some really interesting testimony, and the kind of bottom line of their testimony, of their conclusion is, as written, Intro 2186 would reinforce the current structural imbalance in the city's planning process. And that's my problem with this, is the stated aims are great, the mechanisms are just not there, and are in fact counter to it. So Kavitha, thank you for having me, and thanks to all of you for listening.
Thanks, Anne. Jim?
Just in terms of circulating the draft along, I was going to suggest, if Adam has no objection, that perhaps we include the land use committee on distribution so that they can weigh in and get their support as well, or views rather. On the notion of whether or not we comply with the ULURP point that was just made, I think that's an issue where whoever is doing the project has to assert whether or not the issue, that whatever is being done, is consistent with ULURP or not. But I think that's a rebuttable presumption, as I recollect.
Yeah, it's actually kind of complicated. Like it basically, I'm not sure if it's OLTPS or DCP, but if one of them says a project is consistent with the plan, even if it is not consistent with current current zoning regulations, then it can go ahead without ULURP. So there are opportunities. It's like, unless the local council member flags it, like, then it can still go to ULURP. So, but it seems like it is losing opportunities. I noticed that I didn't get a ton of chance to look through George James's edits, but I think he is interpreting it a little bit differently than I am. So I'd like to talk to him about it, but that's, I'd like to get that clarified.
My read was that it was a rebuttable presumption, and that just because somebody says it's consistent with the comprehensive plan doesn't necessarily mean that it actually is. So in other words,
right, but DCP,
your opinion and swipe of your subway card will get you right on the subway.
No. But DCP, and again, I can't remember if it was DCP or OLTPS. It's probably OLTPS, because this does transfer a lot of authority to them. They can agree, like, they're the ones who get to rebut that, not the community board or DCP, which is
right.
Yeah,
I think it's very fuzzy in my view. It's like there's a lot of gray area there. It's not the same as like saying something's being built as of right. It's different. It's like,
very much
is it consistent with this overall comprehensive plan? Then I want to know what's the criteria to determine that. Is there very specific criteria that checks boxes and says, okay, yes, density or whatever development, or there's all these other things that get looked at. I assume. I don't think this plan is fully baked by any means. I don't, and I will put that out there. I think there's a lot that needs to be thought out in there. But again, and I'm not sure if we can go in and say, like, we support this idea, but we reject this plan. I'm not sure if that's even, maybe someone can let me know if that's something we can do. But it seems like either we reject it outright, or we say we support it with these and object to certain pieces of it. But I do want to run through, oh, Adam, did you have something before I jump into these topics?
Sure. No, I'll comment to the point you brought up. I mean, a lot of the, sort of electeds that we've engaged with this, they've all agreed that this isn't a fully baked plan by any means. Like, one of the reasons they signed on for it is that they would hope to sort of be a part of the sausage making, if you will. And it seems that there's still, sausage to be made. So I think in terms of whatever, we want to pass as a board, I think truly the sky's the limit. So yeah, so
I agree. And I just want to say to that, before I get to you, Lou, is I think this is why we should have this resolution, because I do think they'll be reading all of these things. And one idea that was brought up, I'm sorry, Wells couldn't be at this meeting, but I think Wells brought it up at our last meeting, was like, if we come up with something that's really not specific to our community board, and we can get other community boards behind it at borough board, if Kyle can take it, if he feels comfortable taking it, and getting support from others, it could carry a little more weight in terms of these are opinions that are shared by multiple members of community boards in the various districts. I think that's a really good idea. And I do think, even watching some of the Annie Lever's presentations, there's things where she says, like, we haven't figured that out yet. We haven't figured out like our community engagement techniques, or I'm not sure if I'm remembering it correctly, but there's a lot of things that she said, we're still working on this. So it's not, there's a lot of things that are left to be determined. Okay, go ahead, Lou.
There's nothing unusual about supporting the concept of a proposal and saying we take exception to the following points. And in addition, we think the following things should be added to the proposal. That's a standard operating procedure, and I think it's a very good idea if in fact that's where the committee winds up.
I think if we actually were like, no, we hate this idea of a comprehensive plan, then we would object to it. If not, I really do think we should do it the way we're kind of laying it out now. Jim?
I just wanted to close the loop with Adam as to whether or not we distribute this to the entire land use committee as well.
Fine with me, Adam. We really were thinking of it as being kind of we have so much overlap between the committees, but those couple of people that aren't on both. Sure.
I mean, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I there's no objection on my end. It really just depends on what the mechanism in terms of voting, and that sort of stuff. But in terms of editing or whatnot, I don't have an issue.
And I think I would, given our timeline, I'll work backwards and come up with some kind of framework where we say, if you have comments, we need it by X date, because we want to get in front of George Janes with those comments. I don't really want to go back and forth a dozen times.
That's a great idea.
Later. So we will lay it out, hopefully give people enough time to look at it, weigh in if they're really interested, and then take the whole thing and pick it apart. So just, before we button up this whole thing, I just want you to, as you go through this, if you haven't already, and so clearly laid out a lot of these issues, there's the 10-year time frame, that's an issue, but I want to know, what are we saying that we object to about that? And if we object to it, we want to maybe propose something different. And what exactly is that? This is really a tricky thing, because it's a 10-year time frame, but there's actually like 2 5-year periods within that. So you have to look at it carefully and see. We already mentioned that this Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, basically it's an office, it's an agency, it already exists.
The mayor.
It's the mayor, and it's a mayoral appointee. I'm not going to say it's the mayor, but it's a mayoral appointee, right? So it's giving, to me, at least, it's giving a huge amount of power to one person or one group. But you can weigh in and let me know what you think about that. And then the steering committees are citywide, 13 members. I'm curious about, like, if this thing is happening over 10-year periods, and these are mayoral and speaker and borough president appointees, what is their term of service? And when do those people turn over? Do they turn over with a new administration? And if so, how is this kind of like outside of any kind of, politics, which of course it won't be, but that's kind of the idea, right? This is this independent, like ongoing long-term effort that doesn't worry about who's the mayor at the point. And
it just sounds to me like something that Corey Johnson thought up when he was running for mayor, and now he's running for controller, and it's a little bit half-baked. That's all I have to say. And I do appreciate Anne's comments very much. That sort of crystallized things for me and all the work that Jim put into it. But that's what it's sounding like to me. So
yeah, that's definitely, that's definitely a way you can look at it. And one thing that gets me is the minimum of one public hearing per year during this process.
it just hasn't been thought out. And
Right.
it's like releasing a press release.
It is,
And-
but I think we should really tick
Yeah, I
these
agree.
boxes. And
Absolutely.
then one major thing that we haven't even brought up yet, and I know Jim feels strongly about, and others maybe feel a different way, is this does kind of edit the city charter quite a lot. If you look at the legislation, it bakes in, there's tons of new stuff that's inserted in there. Is a referendum needed? And if so, I know we talked about this with George Janes. I went back to our video to make sure I heard what he said. He basically said, no, it's not in the way that it's written, but is it needed? That's kind of up for, for people to figure out. And the way that Jim has it in there right now is that we ask the appropriate people to review and determine whether this needs a referendum. Right, Jim? So I think that's fair, and I think we should leave that in there.
An opinion from the state attorney general, and
Right.
since it's state law under the home rule law, and also the corporation council for the city.
And then as just going back through the other points, I think the ULURP, the change to the ULURP, the change in general to the role of community boards, because that's another thing that's very unclear to me. I know that 197A has been, is the heart of this committee. It's the whole reason that we exist. 197A, what they talk about it a bit in the planning together document as having been the only way that the community can make a plan or a proposal. And I don't understand if it's literally, I guess it's being folded into this, and they talk about 197As that are less than 10 years old. Of course, ours is over 10 years old. So I feel like it might be gone or not considered at this point if we roll into this new type of planning. And then what? Do we need to, find a way to determine our priorities or redetermine our priorities? So that's what I really had. We will distribute the resolution draft as it is now, if everyone's comfortable who worked on it, with George's edits. Maybe I can take a day and just look at it because people haven't had a chance to really sink in. We'll send it to this committee and land use committee members to review. If you want, I can give you a rundown of these particular points that we were trying to make. I just really would love to get some input to clarify it. Anne, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say my understanding, and Lou, please correct me if I'm wrong, but 197A is basically everything we do is advisory. So, I mean, in some ways, it's not a change, it's how that advice is treated. And so that's, I guess, what we would have to wonder about here. That's what we need to have a better sense of.
Right. But once adopted, right, there is we do have some, some more, power once we have gotten something approved, whether it's approved with, no? And we can't hear you if you're talking. I'm not sure if you're
I'm sorry. I'm not sure that's correct, actually. That's a matter of city charter, and I don't know. But I remember when reviewing the past one, that there was some discussion about, it was not adopted as proposed. It was considered, but that it didn't have, it doesn't have the same force that some other things. And again, Lou or Claude, you might also have a better knowledge of that than I do. Or Adam, for that matter.
Yeah, I'm going to go, just because their hands are up, I'm going to go to Jim and then Sandy.
My understanding is that the 197A plan, once approved and voted on by the city council, is more or less.
You said the magic word, voted on by the city council.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're as you properly said, we are only advisory. However, we have the power to submit a 197A plan get it approved by DCP, get it approved by the city council. And once they do that, then it's, you know, supposedly the plan for whatever portion of the community district is included. So it's more than advisory once they pass it, once the city council passes it or adopts it.
That's how I feel. Sandy, go ahead.
I think, you know, as we know, we've been looking at our 197A, and it still requires a huge push by the community to actually implement what's in it and to make sure that it's important to the community and that it gets done. I think one of the other things to remember is it doesn't have to be a community board that submits some of these these planning ideas. And that may be one of the good things about this proposal, is that it allows others besides just the community board to move forward, to put together, you know, smaller community groups can say, oh, this is really important to us, and develop a plan. So that may be a very positive thing about it.
Thanks, Sandy. Lou?
Just as a matter of record, the Stuyvesant Cove Park, it's not a park, but it's Stuyvesant Cove, was developed as a result of and based on a 197A plan passed by Board 6 30 years ago.
I mean, I think the 197A, as we said, putting it in front of city council, having it voted on, having it approved, even if it's approved with, you know, changes, gives us leverage, right? And that's, I think, what Sandy's saying is we have to keep pushing. It doesn't mean they're just going to do it, but it means that we can go back and say, this was, you know, agreed to as part of this 197A. It's not done yet. We're going to keep pushing and get that done. I think it gives us a further leverage in those things. So, knowing that, I just wonder how things transition if they do adopt some kind of comprehensive planning of this sort.
The original intent of the Stuyvesant Cove was born in Board 6 and presented as a 197A. It took a number of efforts, a number of years to get it actually implemented. But in fact, it is the first 197A in the city, and it was obviously very successful.
And I want to just say thank you for that, because I actually have taken huge amount of advantage of the results of that throughout my time in the city and raising my daughter here and having some open space before joining the community board was ever even a thought in my mind. Just knowing that these things were happening and were pushed by the community and actually achieved is like really amazing to me. So thank you to those of you who may have worked on it and others who I know aren't here today, but I think it's incredible. So given that, I think we have a plan. We are going to distribute this, look at it one more time, distribute the text as we have it, and the draft as we have it with George's edits, and get some input from this committee and land use, and then set up a couple of meetings. If I want to keep those meetings fairly small. So again, unless people have really want to be involved in those, I was thinking we would continue with the folks that had been on it before. If you want to, Jim and Ann, Adam, and if anyone else is, feels strongly that they want to be part of those discussions, please let me know. You don't have to tell me now. You can, look at it and tell us later. But that's it. That's what I have on that for now. Any other questions or thoughts around the comprehensive planning legislation, or else we'll move into the chair's report. Okay. Looks like we're good. So moving on to the chair's report, I don't have a lot. I do want to just mention that it looks like we may be focusing on this again next month. And in addition to that, we want to be looking at the budget priorities. And I'm sure you guys have done it in your other committees already, or are going to do it soon. But we don't, as a committee, we're kind of newish as a committee, so we don't have any budget items that are tagged with strategic community planning yet. We can look at those priorities and say, in addition to being land use or in addition to being whatever other committees under their purview, we also have a stake in this and can, this is what Jesus told me, and Jesus, tell me if I'm wrong, we can also suggest that we put our committee's name to it. And that way, when we filter those things, we will have a list of priorities that we can look at. We also, I don't know if this would be the case looking at all of them, but if there is anything that we feel is missing in the whole list of budget priorities, we can certainly add a new item or two if we need to. So just keep that in mind. I would really task everyone with taking a look at that Airtable, and we can, Jesus will, I guess, you guys know where to find it. I think it's in the budget section of the website. There's a link. And if not, we can send it out after this. But we'll focus on that, and we'll likely focus on this again at our next meeting. And by then, hopefully we have a little bit more to do in terms of the MSBI community engagement plans. So that's all I have on the chair's report. Do we have any old or new? Oh, Jim, go ahead.
It's a new business for this committee, but it's a long-standing issue for the for this community district, and that's the DSNY's plans to build a garage at First Avenue and 26th Street. It's been a long-standing issue. I had thought that perhaps it would be put back because of the budget crisis for the city, but looking at the mayor's capital plan in his most recent budget, I see that it's still an active plan for our district. It is widely opposed, particularly from the people at Waterside, who will most suffer the effects. But it's something that we should keep in mind, given our warrant from the chair. So it should be part of our considerations going forward.
I agree. As should other issues. Claude?
Oh, am I unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Just to add to what Jim is saying, actually, it has never been off the radar. If you look at the citywide statement of needs that is issued on a biannual basis, it has always been on the city's agenda. Excuse me? It has always been on the, it has always been on the city's agenda, and it's stated on a 2-year basis.
Yeah.
If you go directly into the SON, you will see that it's there as an active priority for the district. It has never been removed.
I know. I just figured that with the city having the fiscal straits that it has, that wiser heads would prevail, but apparently not.
No, several years ago, Commissioner Leary said to me, "You will get the sanitation garage. We will never take it off because 2 reasons. We have the land and we have the money.
Yeah.
So you will get it."
Yep. Very, very sensitive idea as to where to locate things. It's free land, right?
All right, Jim,
Anyway,
thanks for
that's all I
reminding
had.
us about that. But we definitely, yeah, that was on our radar. Before I jump into other older new business, I just want to jump back to some of the comments in the chat, because I don't know if this got said, but Joan Boyle, one of the attendees tonight, mentioned like something about our survey, maybe putting a tiny map in there. And I think that's a great idea. So Letty and Sandy or whoever is going to take that survey on, that there's an idea that we can kind of.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm listening.
Awesome. Okay, any other old or new business? We're keeping it pretty short tonight. We've got a brief agenda. Looks pretty quiet out there. Okay. All right, looks like I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned Wow, we did it in an hour, you guys, less than an hour.
Thank you.
8:01.
Good night.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Enjoy the
Night.
evening and see you
Good
soon.
night.
I see you
Take
next
care,
week.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.